Hello, I'm Shelley Moselle, and welcome to Shell Shocked, the podcast. What if we knew then what we know now? How different would our lives be? What if we listened? Really listened to those who have gone before us, listened to their life lessons? Would that change our journey? I'm collecting interviews with some of the most life-traveled people I know who are here to share their what ifs. I invite you to learn their lessons with the hopes our stumbles are lessened. I share with you a collection of great teachers. If I knew then what I know now, your new journey begins right now. Well, good afternoon, and it's 5 o'clock sometime, so cheers to everyone and cheers to you.
Cheers.
I have a woman who I have tried to get on this podcast for over 6 months, and I'm finally got her to slow down. Her name is Pam Agullo, and she is a woman that you are going to fall in love with. She's a philanthropist. She's an activist. She is a beauty queen who has a crown. She actually is a mother of 3. She gives to everything she's involved with every piece of her heart. And above all that, she stands behind her husband. With every single good man, there's a good woman behind them. A man who would not be where he is today with not her backing him all of the way. And on top of everything, she is a doctor. Very few people know that, and I'd love to say that.
I was wondering if you were going to go there.
Oh, we're going to talk about it, Pam.
Go there.
I always say I'm so proud to know that she is a doctor. So let's start in the beginning. You have a lot of history, and we only have 1 hour, Pam.
I know.
So we're going to talk about a lot of things. You started out going to first of all, you're from Mexico City.
I am, born and raised.
And we're in a British grammar school.
Yes, you remember that,
I remember
Shelley.
all of this about you in a British grammar school. And then you decided to go into the medical field. Am I right?
That's right.
And this was all happening in Mexico.
All in Mexico.
So everyone knows that certifications in different countries mean that you might have to be recertified. So we're going to talk about the recertification that you did.
Yes.
But I want people to know that to get where you are right now, it might look beautiful and glamorous and easy. You and I both know it wasn't.
No.
You and I both know there are women out there watching today that will look and say, this looks like an easy, pretty package, but you didn't get there easy. None of us have. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But let's first talk about your children and your family. Let's talk about that. I like to brag. You have 3 children.
Yes, I do. And then most people are so surprised when they hear that because I'm private.
You are very private.
In that respect. Only people that are close to me. My best friend Caleb always shares with me, like clients of his, they're always like, what? She has 3 children? And they can't believe it because I'm really private about it.
You are very private about that. I actually remember when you were pregnant with your 3rd child.
Yes.
And I remember everybody was so excited and you were ready to have this baby. And then devastation came.
Turning moment in my life.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
That was a journey that really marked not only, me as a person, but it marked my soul. Mm. Our 3rd child was planned, as were the first 2. But it took me 5 years to make the decision because I always had this feeling. I am very connected with my intuition. I'm all about energy and, getting in tune with the universe. And so I was so hesitant to get pregnant with him or her. We didn't know, right? Because I could sense that something was going to go wrong. And so it took me 5 years. I finally, decided, let's do it. I don't want to wait any longer. And sure enough, week 27, he gets diagnosed with heart condition that is incompatible with life. So he was only alive because he was inside me. But then, that moment for me is ingrained in my soul, in my mind, forever. It was devastating and it was very scary. But very soon after I received the news from the doctor, I just went through this process where failure was not an option. I can't even describe it into words. It was this inner knowing that things needed to be okay, that I could not lose this child, that this child was brought to life and that somehow it would survive. Like there was no other option. And so we went through this whole journey of getting him over, while I was still pregnant. We transferred to Houston so that he could, get seen there by the specialists. And he was born there. And it was very traumatizing. But, 9 years later, he's a healthy, happy boy with no consequences, no limitations in his life so far. I'll be taking him to his checkup really soon, back to Houston. But I just feel so privileged and blessed that, we have a healthy boy.
Well, and you had the best of medical care.
Yes.
I mean, that happens to all of us, especially when we're connected.
Yes.
And when you're in the medical world and you understand everything they're talking about. And the minute he was born, he was rushed into surgery, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. There was this procedure that had to be performed so that he could be transferred to the ICU. And then a week later, he underwent open heart surgery. And then not only that, 3 months later, he developed another condition that for which he had to undergo surgery again.
Wow.
Yes.
And here you are with this thriving medical practice.
Yes.
Southwest Plastic Surgery. We're going to throw an announcement out there. And many of my women have been to your surgery center for their eyes, for their girls,
yes.
for their butts, from the moms.
Yeah.
Your husband is, I remember when you announced that you were opening your own surgery center up and your own clinic. And I remember that it was such a big deal for you. You guys were very young.
Yes, we were.
Yeah. I mean, we're still very young, but that was back in the beginning, 10, 12 years ago, something like that.
Yes.
And I remember when you announced it, and it started in El Paso and then it just took off. So now your husband, Dr. Worldwide, is known for his local cosmetic, for his Texas, for the United States,
yes.
and internationally.
Yes.
And you have international clients flying in for his specialties. Am I right?
That's right. We're blessed with that too.
You are blessed. But you stood behind as a doctor. You stood behind him and you created, I'm sure with his blessing, but you really created the whole marketing piece behind him. And I remember you chose the colors, you
yes.
chose the logos, which
yes.
is a butterfly that we
yes.
both share and
yes.
love. And you really stood behind him and you still manage that piece, don't you?
That's right. I've always believed that the secret behind success in anything is a driving force, which is passion. And he's so passionate and committed about what he does. And he's actually, fulfilling his purpose in this life.
Right.
Which is performing these beautiful surgeries for women, which a lot of people misjudge. And this is something that I discovered, early on, that plastic surgery, especially in the early years, received, it was taboo.
Right.
And a bad reputation because a lot of people judge it as superficial
right.
and just vain. And, when I started, in the practice interacting with the patients, listening to their feedback after the surgery, you realize that these changes, aesthetic, physical, really go so far beyond just the physical.
Right.
And it has an impact in their lives that has the power to change them as a human being. Like they feel more confident, they excel, at their job. And not only talking about extreme situations that are corrected, like for patients that, lose a lot of weight and they have all of this excess skin and it becomes like a functional thing, right? But also like small things like your nose, like you're self-conscious about your nose, right? And then you get it fixed to your liking and then suddenly that has an effect on you. We've heard, patients' feedback when they come back for their follow-up a year or two. I met the love of my life because I was able to have that confidence, go out there, in a social setting. And then so you realize that the transformation goes far beyond just the surface. And so that's beautiful to witness.
I watched you, now you probably don't remember this because it's been years. I watched you during a hair transplant and you were performing a hair transplant on a gentleman. And it's interesting what is self-conscious for some of us
Yes.
is not for another.
Exactly.
But we have the right to be self-conscious about what we're self-conscious.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. There is that piece where I probably think, when I was 20, I thought, I would never do anything cosmetic. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I will.
Yeah, I know.
All day long,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every day, all day. And it's not for everyone, but it is for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And it's an art and an artistry that must be appreciated. So how much fun of a life that you live, living in that. Let's talk just a little bit about how philanthropic you are in this town, not just in this town, but on an international level. Yes. So I want you to tell me how it started here and how it took a life of its own and where you are today.
Yes, well, going back to the question you asked me, because I think I didn't answer it, is if I still, oversee and manage all of that at the practice. A few years back, I embarked on this personal journey of mine to lead, an intentional life. And for me to do that, I needed to really discover fully what my purpose on this earth was, beyond my professional, beyond my role as a mom, as a wife, etc. And so that journey began about 8 years ago. And it's funny because now I have this, phrase that people close to me are familiar with, and now they make fun of it because I always bring it up. And I say, the universe, it's the universe leading me. It's the universe placing the right person in my path.
Right.
Like you have been in mine. Yeah. So I embarked on this journey of discovering that, what my purpose on this earth was, because I always knew that I wanted to commit myself to my children, raising my children. That is something that I didn't have from a mom perspective growing up, and I didn't want my kids to feel that way. So I did know that, especially in their early years, I wanted to be there for them and raise. And that was a blessing, a privilege that we could, fulfill. And so I did that. And then I made this choice. I need to understand, like on a soul level, why was I put on this earth? And as soon as I started doing that, doors started opening. People started coming into my life, guiding me along the way. And so that one of those first moments was when I was invited to join the board for the society. And that kind of started leading me.
We're talking the Zoo Society.
We are. And that really connected me to my childhood and recalling those moments where I felt the most happy, the most connected to the world, when I was outside. Nature and animals, the wilderness. And so that is where I knew that was my starting point. And from there is where I started connecting, right, with all of these different paths that have now brought me to where I am now. And one of those organizations I am collaborating with and lucky to travel to Africa for is called Mother Trees.
Mother Trees.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's regenerative agriculture, sustainable farming for the people in sub-Saharan Africa. These are farmers, and this is something that I wasn't aware of until I started, educating myself and getting involved. That agriculture in many parts of the world, not only there, has degraded the land. So they do a lot of peanut farming, and peanut farming has depleted the soil to a point where it's just arid, barren, lacks nutrient. It really has just eradicated the forests, the wildlife, everything. It has destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah. So Mother Trees gives farmers the tools and everything they need to practice sustainable farming and get them, pull them out of poverty.
Give me a visual of what happens when you land in Africa. You said 4 times this year.
Yes.
When you've landed there, what do? I know you hit the ground running because you're that kind of person.
Yes.
and you take over. I know
Yes.
you do because you're in charge.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do. What is your daily, like when you hit the ground running, what do you do that makes such a difference over there?
Yes. So John Leary is the CEO and founder for Mother Trees. So he lives in Maryland. We meet usually at JFK and then we travel to Dakar, which is the capital of Senegal. Our main project is there right now. So we land and we usually have to drive 9 hours. So it's almost, just as long as the plane, going over. So we drive because one of our project headquarters is in a village called Kerogu. And so that is where we arrive. We usually spend the night in Kafrine and then we drive. And so what we do every day is go visit the farmers. And we hit the ground. He rents a car. Every time it's a different car. We usually try and get the same driver. And we start, on roads, which are paved, but then eventually they turn into dirt roads and you're really in the middle of nowhere. No cell signal. You're completely isolated. And then John's counterpart there, Omar, he is his lifelong brother and partner in this. He's with us all the time and he has planned out the whole itinerary. And he doesn't give us a chance to breathe.
I'm sure not.
We visit maybe 8-10 farmers a day.
Wow.
We visit their farms. We check up on their progress. This last trip was at the end of rainy season and they had just planted. So it was super exciting for me. And it was such a drastic change from last time because last time was so dry, right? And now it was extremely humid. Everything was green and beautiful and lush, and all those trees that they just planted a couple months ago, have sprouted and started, germinating and that's that. And so we take our video crew with us and we film everything because this is our opportunity to gather content.
Wow.
Yeah, for our website and to have for our potential donors and our sponsors. And so the organization is growing quickly and I'm very excited.
Tell me about animals that you see. I mean, you have to be driving and run into different animals out in the wild.
Yes, well, that is something that for me, the first time I went, I really didn't know what to expect. But John had given me the heads up, especially in that area. We were very saddened to learn in one of our first trips, we met with one of the forest guardians. And he explained that, and he's been the forest guardian for maybe 20 plus years. And so he explained that 20 years ago, it was full of giraffes and zebras and lions, and now they've gone because the forest has dried out. It's dried out, and this is climate.
So they've gone to greener pastures, if you will.
So they've just migrated somewhere else. So really, all what is left is probably a few monkeys here and there, warthogs, birds, and this is where the hope comes in. Where when we visit the gardens for these farmers that they've already flourished. It's growing. They're growing fruits and vegetables and everything, and nuts as well. As soon as you step into the garden, immediately, this is one of the first things I sensed on my first trip. And I told John, oh my God, John, you step in and immediately it's cooler. You close your eyes and hear the birds, lizards, bees, butterflies, like you can feel and sense the biodiversity coming back. But then with the drone shots that we get, you get to appreciate that bird's eye view of the striking difference, right? So imagine a hectare of a garden, green, flourishing, and it has a perimeter of trees, like we call it the living fence, all the way around. And it's a fence of thorny trees to protect everything. Mm-hmm. And then all around, barren, reddish sand.
Wow.
And sometimes like miles and miles and there's nothing, right? And so it's very extreme. Like it's very striking. It's an eye opener. Like if you've never seen it that way and you see it And then you see like the contrast between those families that are already integrated into the program. They're safe. They're happy.
So it's an education piece, and you're bringing education and I'm assuming finances in.
Yes.
So real quick, how can people know more about this?
Yes.
How do you follow you?
Thank
and
you.
if they really are interested in putting money into a conservation piece over there,
Yes.
give us a real quick how they find that.
Yes. So you can find us on all social media platforms as Mother Trees.
Okay.
Yes. And then I am Pam Gone Green official. So
Pam Gone Green. I love it.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for funding. No question.
Yes.
I mean, this is a
Always.
nonprofit.
Yes, it is. So yes, we look for funding. We've been lucky enough that John has 20 plus years of experience in the field. So he has built a very good network. And so we have Very Tree and Ecosia and Gift Trees and other potential, sponsors and donors that have jumped into the project. So we're starting off good, but of course we always need more,
Of course you do.
and to increase our impact
And to keep interest. You're educating people
Yes.
over in the United States what's
Yes.
really happening in Africa.
Yes,
And the
because-
importance of conservation.
Yeah, because when people ask me, "Oh, hey, what are you doing in Africa? What's that all about?" and I start explaining what the real problem is with the peanut farming, and then the first time we went, Shelley, this was, oh my God, and we got shots of that too. So it's like miles and miles. I didn't even know that peanuts grow in a bush.
I don't either.
Right. Like I didn't know
That's
this
not
like
something
3
I know
years ago,
either.
right? So they grow in a bush on the roots. And when it's a green bush and you look at it like from afar, and it's a pretty bush. It has yellow flowers. It's deadly for the environment, for the soil.
Mm.
And so these farmers have harvested peanuts for years, and that's all they know. They don't know any better, right? Do you know how much they earn? $200 a year.
Oh my goodness.
And there you have women and children. After they pull out the bush, when it's ready to harvest, they pull it out. And that's a huge problem because they bring with the roots the topsoil, right? That's how it gets degraded and depleted. And so they pull it out. The peanuts are there. They extract them. They have, several, they've devised several mechanisms and, machines to help them extract the peanuts from the roots. But then it boils down to, well, we need to get as many peanuts as we can, right? And so you have the children digging in the dirt with their nails, the women digging, and, maybe they spend 3 hours and they get like a little plastic cup full of the
Do you eat
peanuts.
peanuts to this day?
No, I can't.
I would have never
can't.
thought, because you know how hard it is to come by
it's
them
horrible. Like,
and what it does to
Yes.
what it does to the land, and how hard the people work to get those peanuts at $200 a year.
can you imagine?
No, I can't.
It's devastating.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, changing.
Yes.
You don't always live on a peanut farm,
No.
and sometimes you get to visit Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Huge trip to Rome.
Yes.
Gucci did an amazing invite specifically to you to Rome. So we're going to take off your khakis and take your hat off.
Yes.
We're going to dress
My
you,
hat.
your
Yeah.
hats, the woman with many hats, and we're going to dress you up because Gucci did a very interesting VIP invite. There are very, very few. What, 100 people? Tell me a little bit about the phone call that you got. That was
Yes.
random Gucci phone call
Yes.
inviting you to Rome.
Yes. So
I love this, by
yes,
the way.
I know.
love this
It
story.
was the story of a lifetime, and I wish we can get a chance to repeat the experience. It was just amazing beyond words. So we've developed a relationship with Gucci over the years. And one day we receive a phone call, and I have a picture of it somewhere in my 25,000 pictures on my phone, where the phone rang and it actually read Gucci. And I was so confused because I thought it was like a joke or something. I thought it was the rep, and it wasn't. It was actually, head of Gucci and in Chicago, and extending an invitation for an all-paid trip to Rome to experience the high jewelry launch for their collection. And so it was extraordinary. And Italy is just, this, Shelley.
I love Italy.
You love
I'm
Italy
going to
too.
end up living in Italy.
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
my end all.
Yes.
Mhm.
I might meet you there. It was just extraordinary. A beautiful, beautiful setting. So the main event was the release of this collection, the high jewelry collection, in a very exclusive setting, a castle in the middle of Rome. You would never expect it. In the middle of Rome, and then you step into the castle. It's a very, high security restricted area. It's in the middle of Rome, and you really, when you step inside, you don't understand because you feel you're like in the countryside, right? It's like this weird time warp location kind of thing where you don't really understand how that beautiful, spacious place can live inside such a packed city, right? Beautiful setting. And so we were given a tour of the beautiful jewels. It's just breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking.
If you haven't heard enough, grab a cocktail and we'll be right back. If you've heard enough, just grab another cocktail. Shell Shocked is available courtesy of Chateau Trois Colline Nissa, a Lebanese Sauvignon Blanc, available at El Paso local Total Wine locations, and by City Magazine, El Paso's only monthly lifestyle magazine celebrating all the good things going on in the city. Learn more at thecitymagazineelp.com. If you heart Shell Shocked, keep listening.
And
never forget.
Never.
So I saw the images, and if anyone wants to see what those images look like, they're all over your Instagram.
Yes.
2 years ago, Pam?
I don't want to know because time flies. Maybe
time
2 years ago. It must have been 2
years.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it must have been 2.
Maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. So if they go back on your Instagram, they can see all these gorgeous images of you.
Yes.
All over Rome.
Yes.
Wearing Gucci.
Yes. And then of course it was a Gucci themed trip, and so I was lucky enough, to be able to wear Gucci throughout the trip, and take my crew with me. And,
unforgettable.
Yeah, capture all those beautiful moments.
Well, we love that.
Yes.
A little bit about your motherhood, and we talk a little bit about women trying to balance life. There's no balancing life, so let's take that word off the table. Figuring out how to maneuver life, and one of the things that I love about what you say is you try to give every one of your children a little piece of you every single day. And you've kind of divided up what I remember you telling me that your son playing football.
Yes.
That was very important that you would try to drive him back and forth to practice or to school. So you had that small little one-on-one time with him. I also remember, we'll talk about this in a minute, that you always knew you wanted to be a mother.
Always.
And your childhood may not have been the perfect childhood.
No.
But you know that you wanted your children, future children, to have a perfect life.
Yes.
And if memory serves me, you were looking at being a neurologist.
Cardiologist. Yeah, actually, I wanted to go into cardiothoracic surgery.
Okay.
I quickly learned in medical school that is such a time-consuming specialty that I knew. It was a difficult truth to face because after so many years, of dedicating myself to medical school, realizing that I had to choose because I don't want to half-ass anything.
Yeah.
And you can't. And I know that you cannot fulfill those two roles fully if you do both at the same time. So I had to choose. And for me, it was easy. It was difficult in the sense that I couldn't.
The direction you thought you were once going, and then you'd really worked very hard in the medical school that you had to make a decision.
Yeah.
To either have a family or not have a family. Yeah. And I think if I remember that you had a mentor that kind of sat you down, and wasn't there a mentor that told you, hey, I don't have friends.
Yeah.
I don't have children.
Yes, she was.
I don't have a husband.
Yes, she was in the 6th year of medical school because it's different in Mexico. And so that is when we do our rotations at the hospital. And so I was at the ICU, and she was this just mind-blowingly good neurologist. She was an eminence. She was respected. She was, published. She was invited to conferences. She was like the best. She was the best of the best. But, having that one-on-one with her, I realized she has no life. She has no life partner. She has no family. Like, this is her life.
That's it.
That's it. Her patients, The hospital, that's it. Sometimes she wouldn't even get a chance to go home and shower. Like she would stay at the hospital. And so that was a turning moment for me. I thought, oh my God, yes, I love medicine, but no, I don't want this for
Not
myself.
to sacrifice
no,
your life with a family.
No. And so another turning point for me when my eldest was born, who's now 18.
Whoa.
And in college. And so he was born. That is when it hit me like hard. Like I kind of knew it, but then when he was born and I held him, that is where it was so easy for me. I was like, there is no way for anything that I would leave this child of mine with anybody else. And if I have that privilege that we can make it work on one salary, a resident's salary. Yeah, it was hard, but we made it happen.
I want you to talk a little bit about that because where you are today wasn't where you were then.
No, and many people I think that don't know me from back then are quick to judge, right?
Right.
So yeah, and this is a story that I shared with a good friend the other day because I remembered I had to make the grocery shopping list and spend $100 a week. That was my budget.
That's a budget. And that's what residents, that's what they live on.
Yes. Like resident salaries are, it was really
Peanuts.
tight. Yes, it was a peanut. Yeah, a peanut salary. It was very tight, but we made it work. And I think that's another thing when people don't know me. They're like, "What? You gave up your whole medical career? Like, are you crazy after all that?" No, like for me, it was easy.
Okay, it wasn't just the medical career in Mexico. You came over to the United States and decided that you wanted all of your boards over here too.
Yes.
So that you could practice actually in both countries.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
And how hard was that you learned everything in Spanish?
Yes.
And to come over and have to translate. I know you spoke English, so you spoke because
but the medical
grew up
terminology.
in the British school, but the terminology and to have to redo all of that again.
It was difficult. Very, very difficult, Shelley. Not only because of that, but because the way medicine is taught in Mexico is completely different than the way it's taught here. And then you're surprised, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So this is what happens. In Mexico, you are thrown into the fire. Go. This is your patient. Figure it out. Right? After you go through the first 2 years.
Wow.
Third year, you start rotating through the hospital's different services. And it might not be the safest, right?
I would think not.
No,
by the way.
For the patient or you, right? And I have a bunch of stories, but really that is an extreme way of highlighting the difference where Mexico, you learn with the patient in the fire, in the operating room, I delivered babies, in the middle of the night with no help.
You had to have been scared to death.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lot. Two lives you have in your hands.
Yes, exactly. And you figure it out. And that is the hard way to learn, right? Whereas here in the States, it's the other extreme. You can't see a patient. You can't touch a patient. You can't treat a patient. You're never by yourself. But then you never really learn what you really need to learn, right?
Because of hands-on or not.
Yes. And so here they teach you how to ace those boards. And that was a big challenge for me because I knew maybe how to deliver a baby, right? But that's not what was on the test.
Wow.
So it was very, very challenging. But I did it and I did really good on them. And so I was proud of that. But then shortly after that, we decided to start our family because Frank still needed, I think, 2 or 3 more years of general surgery here. And then we knew we were going to go do plastic somewhere else. So it was the moment.
So a lot of directions, a lot of shifting, a lot of changing, and a lot of paths change difference. There are so many of us that think that we're going to grow up and this is what we're going to be.
Yes.
And when we're not, we think, oh, there's a failure, there's a breakdown, things aren't working out. Did that bother you? Did you fight your head or did you say, nope, I got this? We're going to maneuver through this. I mean, I know Frank to be, or Dr. Agullo, sorry, to
Frank,
be
please.
incredibly supportive
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
As you are for him.
Yeah.
So I am sure that the two of you said, we'll make it together no matter what.
Yeah.
And you were like this unit.
Yeah.
But was there any part of it that you were like, I don't know, this is scaring me. We're making so many changes, so many directions. Or did you just say, you know what? The universe has us. We're good.
Yeah. No, I was never really scared. Never really scared. We knew, like we made the conscious decision. Let's wait. It didn't make sense, in any way for me to start a residency. If we knew that we were going to go somewhere else for his plastics.
That would divide the two of you.
Yes, that wasn't an option. So I was fine with that totally. And then when we arrived at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, I was pregnant with Sophie, our daughter. She's the middle one. And so she was born there, right? And then that's where I waited like 5 years, 7 years for the third one. And then by the time we got back, then is when I decided to go for the third one.
So would you encourage any of the three of your children to go into the medical world?
I'm glad you asked that question, Shelley. Because I always knew, and this is a conversation I was very purposeful about to have with Frank, right? When I saw the moment approaching, let the kids, start asking about that. Frank and I had this conversation. So we were, thankfully both on the same page where we decided to never pressure them.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Because I hate that, I'm a big believer that everybody's put here on this earth for a reason.
And you're right.
And your job as a parent is to help that child, that human being, discover what that purpose is. Yep. Right?
We align in that belief.
Yes. So if you have the privilege to fulfill that purpose, once you discover what it is, how horrible would it be for somebody to remove that privilege, right?
And pressure you another direction.
Yes, no. Yeah. Because there's so many people that do not have that privilege of, I want to be an artist. No, I have to sustain my family. Mm-hmm. I have to do something else for a living. And so, no, we've always let them, find that purpose.
I mean, it would be really hard for a child to be raised and be in your household and watch Dr. Agullo do everything that he does.
Yes. And
then to watch the other female Dr. Agullo do everything that she does. And then to realize, hey, I have big shoes to fill. I mean, that's a lot of pressure for a child. So I love knowing that that's not a pressure you put on your children. No. You're like, follow your path.
Find it, discover it, and follow it.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Oh. So there's other things that you do in life that you're currently doing right here in El Paso. Tell me a little bit about what you've got. I know we know what's going on in Africa. Yes. What's going on right here in the middle of El Paso today? What is your week this week?
Shelley, we need like another 3 hours for that. Yes. So I've been part of the board for the El Paso Zoo Society for almost 8 years. I'm serving as chair. And it has been a very challenging period for us. And I'm sure most of your listeners have heard, quite
controversy.
A bit. Controversy, mm-hmm. At least something in the news. It's been kind of quiet for the past 3 or 4 months. And I think we finally, this is something else that I believe in, and it's happening to us right now. So blessings in disguise. Mm-hmm. And I believe that everything, if you are ready to receive, everything comes at you at the precise moment. And this is what has happened to the organization. And we've been able to find the light and really, yes, transform this very difficult period we underwent.
Obstacles, lots of obstacles.
Yes. Very challenging. I really can say that this was, I think, one of the hardest things I've undergone.
Well, I followed you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
from the beginning, almost, because I am a lover of our zoo. I go all the time. I take my grandchildren all the time. And then there was controversy, and people took stands.
Yes.
And you had to take a very strong stand. And your stand was for the animals. You know, right is right and wrong is wrong. And that's what you stood for.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have no regrets.
No.
But I did see you in the news a bunch, by the way.
Yes.
I know it was controversial, but you've landed in a really good spot. I can't say it's a soft spot because it was probably a hard landing.
Yeah.
But you're in a good place right now.
Yes. We found the light. We are re-envisioning ourselves. We're finding a new direction. And really, I think what has enabled us to get through this is our commitment to our mission, and that we are so lucky to have a strong board and a strong team that are passionate. You see, passion again.
Passion again.
When you do the things for the right reasons, rooted in that principle, the path will appear. And so that's where we are at now.
So it has always comes to a point where I love our listeners, especially if someone's in a really dark spot and they think life is easy for her. And I'm in a dark dungeon and I can't crawl out because I don't know how to get out of it, and they lose hope. Tell us something that I can't Google about you, that I may not know about you, of a time in your life where it was dark and you said, I don't know if I'm going to get out of this. If you're comfortable, find a spot that you talk about that, and then talk about how you got out, that this might really be a learned lesson for a woman, because this podcast talks to women for the most part, for another woman to encourage her, hey, I was in a really dark spot here, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And however the universe helped you work through that, people want to know that life for you wasn't always as perfect, pretty as this picture we get of you right now.
No. Well, I think I have to go back to my childhood. This is something that many, many people don't know, even people close to me, because I really don't talk about it much. And I like to think it is because I've surpassed it. I went to therapy for it. I healed it. I healed that part of me. But yes, I can say that there were moments during my childhood, especially in my teenage years, where, yes, I felt hopeless with life in general, with the mother figure I was given in this lifetime. But as I said in the beginning, and this is something that my sister, I only have one sibling, my sister, and she was in a way my only mother figure. She filled those shoes partially. She can't really, right? But and we're so close, and this is something that we shared. And somehow in those really dark moments, there was something in me that I knew that despite everything that my childhood was and was not, and all that suffering, and it was just really bad, I knew deep down there's a higher force. And I remember I told my sister, yes, we are going through this, but there is a part of us that she can't touch ever. No matter how much she wants to harm us emotionally, physically, psychologically, there is this part that is untouchable because it's the higher purpose.
I think that's incredibly important. Now you make me cry. I think it's important because there are so many women who maybe didn't have the mother figure that ideally they wished for, and that they looked around and said, but your mom, and I didn't get that. But as dark as it got for you, you didn't quit. And at some point there was this universe that picked you up and took you where you are today. And I just think it's very important. I need a Kleenex already. I think it's very important that when people look at you to know, you kept swimming. You kept going.
Yes.
You knew that there was something bigger and better. And then you didn't let that believe what happened to you. People say, well, you're taught to be a mother the way your mother teaches you.
Right.
No, not so true.
No, but you know what, Shelly? After therapy and everything, and I realize now that if it weren't for that, I couldn't be the mother I am today. Like, there's no way that was something that I could use to at least say, this is what I do not want ever, right? And also, an essential and vital part in that whole journey experience was my dad. He was that shining light for us, that despite his role in all it, he was a shining light and always has been. And so I think, because my sister and I like sometimes joke about this or laugh about this, we're like, oh man, like after all we went through, you'd expect like, we didn't turn out so bad, right? Like we survived,
and you're good human beings.
Yeah, we're good human beings. And so how did that happen? And we know that it was because of my dad, that despite his role in all of it, he was always a shining light.
So I guess I would say part of a takeaway, if there is one, is that from what you're saying, and from what I know, is we don't, our past doesn't define who we are in the future.
No. And I think a lot of us get so stuck in that.
Agreed.
And when, now that I realize this for myself, when I'm talking to other people and having, a deep conversation with them, I realize, oh my God, you're just stuck in that. And because it's not easy, right? To step out of it. It's sometimes, and the mark is so deep and the wounds are so deep that it's not easy to pull yourself out. Yeah.
So tell me, where is Pam Agullo in 10 years?
I am going to have to come back for another podcast for that, because I do have a vision.
You do?
Yes. I have
Give us a synopsis.
I can't, Shelly.
Short version. Oh, then, okay.
I can't.
Stay tuned for part 2.
It's a surprise, yeah.
Stay tuned for part 2. When do we get to do part 2?
Yes. Let's schedule it now. Otherwise, it's going to take us 2 years.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's so 5 o'clock somewhere. And usually when my wine glass starts getting empty, I know I'm reaching the pat. I always ask that we get to have a takeaway from you, like a message that you give women. So let me hear, what would that message be before we close this podcast?
Before we close, let me take a sip.
Oh yeah, we need sips. I drink the whole time you talk, so I end up empty, way ahead.
Maybe I've talked too much.
No, there's always this takeaway, this message that you could look at some young lady, like, here's your message in a short version. What is that?
You are not alone. You are never alone. And you have to look inside. Because I think a lot of us, and society, the world, has taught us, conditioned us to look outside for help, outside for happiness, outside for resources. But I think where it needs to start is from the inside. And this is part of the exercise I've been focusing on for myself. You need to start on the inside, and you will find what you need there.
Well, that's a great way to end.
Yes.
So Thank you, Dr. Pam Agullo, with 3 children and
Thank you,
a
Shelley.
thriving medical practice. It's 5:00 somewhere.
Thank
Toast
you so
to
much,
you.
Shelley.
Thank you for spending
Cheers.
time with us. And thank you for your
having
message
me.
of strength and of womanhood and of not ever letting obstacles just stop you, showing us how you reroute your life. You're quite a mentor for many, many women. And we are going to invite you back because we want to know what phase 2 is
Yes.
and what's happening next. Because when you say I have a vision, I'm sure you do, and I'm dying to know. So for those of you who have never followed Pam Agullo, what are your handles, Pam, right now?
Yes, so I have Instagram, Pam Gone Glam.
Pam Gone Glam.
And then I have my second one, Pam Gone Green Official. So
Thank you for sharing your time with us today. And I hope you get to know a little bit more about my very dear friend, Pam Agullo, who is as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside. And that is quite a compliment.
thank you so much, Shelley.
So anyway, thank you, listeners, and stay tuned. It's 5:00 somewhere. I'm Shelley Moselle, and you've been listening to Shell Shocked. I'm available on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and join me next week. Until next time, kiss this.